Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome into the week 3 edition of my top waiver wire targets and streamable defenses. You guys should know the drill by now, but just in case we do have first time listeners, the first section I'm starting with is my top waiver wire targets. These players, they do have to have at least 50% roster availability per ESPN. So there is a good chance they're available in your leagues when you're hitting the waivers tonight, or even throughout the week, depending on some of these players. But with that being said, I'll go ahead and dive into it, starting at the quarterback position. My top quarterback out of the week, I am going to go with a guy who looks like he might be reviving his career in Indianapolis, Daniel Jones. He's only on 21.4% of the rosters right now. He's got a good matchup this weekend, too, going against the Titans. I do think he's a quality streaming option, especially if you guys are Joe Burrow managers and you basically lost Joe Burrow for this fantasy football season. And reason why I like him is it does seem like they are passing the ball with him. He has at least 25 pass attempts. He's thrown for at least 270 yards and one passing touchdown in each of the first two games. And in those two games, he also has those 3 rushing touchdowns. They use him when they get down to the goal line in those quarterback sneak options. And then as well, we all do know this with Daniel Jones from the past, is he is a mobile quarterback, so he gives you a higher rushing floor. Didn't get a lot of yards running the ball in the first game, but in this past weekend, he had 26 rushing yards. Now, obviously, the biggest question is, will this be sustained? Will the old Daniel Jones pop up? But for now, he's playing at the best that we've seen Daniel Jones probably play since that year the Giants went to the playoffs. So right now, I think he's a good option if you need a short-term option, and then you're betting on that potentially this is the Sam Darnold experience from last year, where he ends up being a fantasy relevant quarterback throughout the season. Now, we do have 2 repeat names from my waiver wire targets from last week. This is the first name that's a repeat, but that rookie running back for the Jaguars that I mentioned last week, as I think he was my flex ad of the week last week, but Bashal Tutin. I hope I'm pronouncing his first and last name right. He's rostered on 40% of the rosters right now. Going against the Texans, which we did see last night, Bucky Irving and Rashad White did have a good outcome in that Monday night matchup against the Texans. I'm not sure if he's playable yet, but I think the good sign with him is he did in the first game after they traded Tank Bigsby to the Eagles, he got at least 10 touches, and he turned those 10 touches into 74 yards and a touchdown. So I don't know if he's quite yet a flex play, but if you're like a Travis Etienne manager and you you don't have a good handcuff option on the bench, you should definitely be adding Tootin. And then if you just don't like your running back depth options, if you don't have Etienne, I think Tootin is definitely worth a stash and should be getting closer to that 50% roster ownership on ESPN. My wide receiver out of the week, and this guy might be playable at least for the foreseeable future because he does seem like he has some chemistry with Russell Wilson, is Wan'Dale Robinson for the Giants. He's only on 29.9% of the rosters right now, going against the Chiefs this weekend. And why I do like him is he's getting a lot of he's getting peppered with a lot of targets. He in the first 2 games, he's gotten at least 8 targets in each game, and he's gotten at least 6 receptions in each of those games. And then in this past weekend against Dallas, when Russell Wilson lit up the Cowboys defense, he had 8 receptions for 142 yards and a touchdown on 10 targets. So the fact that he's getting at least 8 targets a game so far in this season, that makes him rosterable. If you don't have great wide receiver options for this week, I think he's definitely maybe like a wide receiver 3 for this week, but he should definitely be on benches if you guys do not love your wide receiver depth. My second repeat name from last week, he was my tight end ad of the week last week. He's going to be it again until either his production drops or we finally get him over that 50% threshold. But Juwan Johnson, the tight end for the Saints, he's only rostered on 48.3% of the rosters right now. It's going against the Seahawks this weekend, which, if Pat Freiermuth didn't drop that awesome ball from Aaron Rodgers this past weekend, and if Calvin Austin didn't get in the way, Pat Freiermuth, who's a tight end, would have had a good fantasy outcome against the Seahawks last week. So Johnson, I do think, is playable this week if you do need help at the tight end position. He's a good streaming option. He might be a good starting option going forward, just because the amount of targets that Spencer Rattler is throwing his way. And each of the first 2 games, he's gotten at least 9 targets, he's caught at least 5 balls, and he's turned that into at least 45 receiving yards. So I do like him as a good, solid, like low end tight end 1 at this point, just based off that the fact that he's getting close to double digit targets a game, and he's getting you at least 5+ receptions, because especially in half point PPR, full point PPR leagues with the tight end position, sometimes all you want is just 5 points out of your tight end, right? So the fact that he's catching at least 5 receptions, I know it's a small sample size, but I do think he should be on more rosters going forward. My flex out of the week, this isn't that guy you're not going to play. This is more just looking ahead for handcuffs. As we've seen this past weekend, it's more at the quarterback position. But you do want to make sure you plan ahead with your handcuffs, especially if you're a Bijan Robinson manager and you don't love your running back depth options. But Tyler Algier for the Falcons, he's only on 34.1% of the rosters right now. This is mainly just in case you were to lose Bijan Robinson. Obviously, Bijan Robinson was a top 3 pick in most of my drafts. I'm assuming in your guys' drafts as well. And what you do like is does have a role in this offense, despite Robinson being the lead back in Atlanta. He's gotten at least 10 touches in each of those first 2 games, so he is getting the ball when he comes on the field to relieve Robinson. I don't know if I don't think he's in flex play this week, but he is going against the Panthers, and the Panthers have struggled against running backs so far this season. Moving into the top streamable defenses for week 3, again, just like the waiver wire targets, these defenses do have to be available in at least 50% of the leagues on ESPN, so there is a good chance they're available for you guys if you're looking to stream a defense this week. Number 1 defense is actually looking like one of arguably the best defenses in the league. It's the Green Bay Packers, and they're playing the Browns this week. They're only rostered right now in 45% of the rosters on ESPN. Obviously, we saw what this defense did against the Lions offense, and we saw what the Lions offense did this past weekend. We saw what they did to the Commanders last Thursday, and then they're just going against the Browns. I love the fact that they got Micah Parsons, who's probably going to end up playing even more snaps, especially that he's gotten that extra time between a Thursday night game until they play this game on Sunday. And then I'm gonna go over some stats for you guys, but I do want to say this is a small sample size. This is only 2 games. I think I'm gonna talk about the Falcons here in a second. I'm pretty sure they got majority of their sacks against the 90% of those sacks they have against the Vikings on Sunday night. But sticking with this team, why I do like the matchup is again Micah Parsons going against a statue of a quarterback in Joe Flacco. I like the idea of Micah Parsons getting at least 2 sacks and maybe forcing a fumble off Joe Flacco this weekend. Green Bay is actually tied for the second most sacks in the NFL through the first 2 weeks. And then what this also does, it gives you a high ceiling because the Browns are tied for the second most turnovers as well through the first 2 games. My second streaming option I like of this week, I am going to go with the Colts against the Titans. The Colts are rostered on 36.6% of the leagues right now. Obviously, Cam Ward has made some great plays, but that offense is still struggling. Despite him making good plays, I did notice this past weekend in the box score, he only averaged, 5.6 yards per pass attempt or whatever I saw, or maybe completion. So it's not like they're getting a lot of yards against the defenses that they're playing. And then why I do like this is the Titans have struggled to protect Cam Ward, and Cam Ward does have a tendency of holding the ball too long, which is leading into sacks. So far through the first 2 games, the Titans have allowed the most sacks in the NFL, and they also are tied for the 3rd most turnovers. So that gives you a good high ceiling when they're giving up the sacks and ideally the turnovers, which you can hope turn into points. And then the fact that they're turning over the ball, what you do like is that the Colts right now are tied for the 3rd most takeaways in the NFL. So you're betting on the Colts defensive front, be able to get after the rookie quarterback, get those sacks, and try to pressure him into making those rookie mistakes, which can result in turnovers and potentially like a return touchdown for you this weekend. My number 3 streaming defense I do like the Falcons against the Panthers this weekend. Falcons are only rostered on 1.3% of the rosters right now. Some news before I dive into those stats I've been talking about. The Panthers placed 2 of their starting offensive linemen on IR this week. So they're going to be down 2 starting offensive linemen. And then when you look at the stats for Atlanta, they are actually tied for the 3rd most sacks in the NFL right now. Again, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, Do take some of these stats with a grain of salt, because I'm pretty sure the most 90 at least 90% of those sacks came against the Vikings on Sunday night. But you do also like that the Falcons are also tied for the third most takeaways in the NFL. And then speaking of the takeaways, Carolina actually is tied for the most turnovers in the league. So you got a defense that has been getting some turnover, has been forcing some turnovers, going against the offense that has been turning the ball over the most so far in this young season. So that's why I do like the Falcons this week. And then we'll have to see. If you guys have not heard, Jaden Daniels is dealing with a knee sprain. I think the head coach said he's day-to-day, so we'll have to see. But if this Jaden Daniels injury actually does knock him out for this week and possibly next week, one thing to keep in mind is they play the Commanders next week. So again, this is a major if Jaden Daniels were not to play next week, you do have an option, because they have Marcus Mariota as their backup quarterback. You do have the option of potentially streaming the Falcons 2 weeks in a row. My number 4 streaming defense, honestly, I wanted to put them higher, but I do have to, look at the fact that Russell Wilson and that Giants offense are coming off their really great performance this past Sunday and that loss against the Cowboys. But I still do like the Chiefs defense against the Giants on that Sunday night matchup. Chiefs are only rostered on 12.4% of the rosters right now. Kansas City is tied for the 5th most sacks in the NFL. And then I just like the fact that this is a primetime game. The Chiefs are 0-2. They are a desperate team. And I think desperate teams are going to be trying to make plays on their defense. We saw Russell Wilson. He did light him up, made that one terrible mistake with that interception he threw in the overtime. So I do want to bet the fact that Russell Wilson will kind of come back down to earth in this matchup. And and I'm not the biggest fan of the Giants offensive line. We saw those penalties they got. So I do like the idea of Chris Jones and the rest of that defensive front for Kansas City getting after him and getting you guys some sacks and some points as well. My number 5 streaming defense, this is a high risk, high reward play. But I am going to suggest the Bengals against the Vikings on Sunday. The Bengals are only rostered on 2.1% of the rosters. In case you guys did not hear, J.J. McCarthy is going to be missing this game. So guess who's going to play? It's going to be Carson Wentz. And we all do know, as much as maybe Carson Wentz, especially with KOC, could potentially light up the Bengals defense, he also is prone for making boneheaded mistakes and making those turnovers, which can get you points for your defense. A couple of the reasons, too, Minnesota is still missing. We'll have to see if Darisaw is back for them. Ryan Kelly got hurt in that past game with a concussion, so usually that means he'll probably miss this game. So the Vikings are down 2 offensive linemen. They're down their starting quarterback. They're playing Carson Wentz. Aaron Jones was placed on IR today. So that is some major factors why I do like the Bengals as well. And then when you look at the stats I looked at, the Vikings are actually have allowed the 2nd most sacks in the NFL. And they're actually tied for the most turnovers as well. And then surprisingly, again, this is only a 2-game sample size, so you don't want to read into it too much. But the Bengals are actually tied for the 3rd most takeaways this season. Again, high risk, high reward play. I'd prefer the top 4 defenses, but if you were to miss out on those top 4 defenses and the Bengals are still available for you, I would consider rolling the dice on them, especially in like 12-14 team leagues. So yeah, those are my top waiver wire targets and streamable defenses for week 3 of this fantasy football season. As always, if you guys enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. If you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button. Follow me on all my social media platforms. You can mainly find me on X. That's where I'm the most active, and I'm most likely going to reply to anything is on X. But obviously, I'm also on Instagram. I do cut up these videos and put them on TikTok as well. So yeah, next time you guys will see me, it will be tomorrow night when I do my top starts and sits. So I'll talk to you then. Peace out.